Well, hello and welcome to all of our viewers around the world. I'm Fiona Langsharp, IBCLC Director of Communications and MC here at Gold Learning. Welcome to my very good friend and colleague, Dr. Lyndsey Hookway. Lyndsey, it's so good to have you here. You are going to be speaking at one of our up-and-coming events, our Gold Lactation Online Conference 2025, Supporting Families in a Sleep Crisis without non-responsive sleep training. Absolutely fabulous. Great to have you here today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here again, chatting all things sleep and crises and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's still happening. I mean, that's the reality. You think that, with all the things that we know today, and you and I have been talking about this subject for many, many years, and you would think that we know more, we can do better. But the reality is that, of course, we've got new parents coming into the field all the time, and that's the reality. And it's shifting and changing all the time. That was actually a question. I just want to put you in the hot seat because I feel like our language has to shift again. We're talking a little bit about, how we're going to do that. How are you finding that the language has shifted again over the last few years? Or are you not really seeing that? That's really what I want to hear from you.
Oh, okay. Well, so I mean, I might live in a slightly biased world because people who follow me tend to already have rejected a kind of mainstream non-responsive
Right.
approach to managing sleep. So I don't know if I'm getting the full picture, but I certainly hear like whiffs of sleep nonsense all the time. So I do a regular weekly Q&A, and that's a really good way for me to understand what are the things that are bugging the average parent in the
Sure.
community right now. So people are still bugged by short naps, late bedtimes, kids who don't self-settle, kids who don't sleep through the night. When is it normal for, babies to sleep through the night? When is it ever dangerous for my baby to wake every 1 to 2 hours all night? So the, every question you can think of about sleep is definitely something that bugs new parents, I think, out there.
Right.
And certainly, the things they believe are often really unhelpful for responsive parenting and feeding. So, the strict nap timings, the strict schedules, um, following prescriptive apps and so on, all of that stuff can undermine and derail a responsive approach to parenting. So, yeah, it's so important to understand this stuff and know kind of what is on the mind of your average client out there. Because if you're seeing a client for lactation support, the chances are they're also stressing out about sleep as well, right? Because it's just
Yeah.
part of new parenting.
Absolutely, it is part of all parenting. And I did take some notes today because as you were talking about this again, and again, I know a lot about this, but it reminds me of how limited we are when we are hired. So as a lactation professional, because that's, who we're talking about today and how to support families. But when I go in to resolve one problem that leads to another problem that leads to another. And beyond that, the information I actually have when I'm sitting with the client that they're willing to give to me, there is all the other stuff that is happening that you talked about in your presentation. And that there is a lot of stuff that can impact, everything from the type of birth, the relationships, and I'm talking about generational relationships, who's influencing. They might even be following somebody online, and it might not be you, Lyndsey.
Indeed,
So that
indeed.
yeah. So there are multiple things. Do you think that, in a sense, then we really do need to have a deeper awareness when we go in as lactation professionals into a situation that we need to be more open to what we're actually there to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. I think ultimately parents might hire you for, a feeding challenge that they're having. But the reality is that we don't kind of compartmentalize our lives so that like there's the feeding box and there's the sleep box and there's the kind of adaptation to parenting and maternal ambivalence and oh my gosh, what have I done? Kind of
Right.
box and the like I thought me and my partner got on, but oh my gosh, it turns out that like I feel like we don't know each other at all, box. And like when you when you go into somebody's home and they're in that position of vulnerability, especially as a new parent, what happens is it's like somebody just like pulled all the boxes off the shelf and it all just lands in a scattered heap all over the floor and it all comes out. And so, yeah, you might be there to deal with sore nipples or an exclusive pumping challenge, but the chances are you're going to be unpacking, is it normal that my baby sleeps like this? Or how do I cope with the fact that my baby doesn't settle anywhere but my chest, or, I actually feel really terrible and rubbish, and all of that stuff kind of explodes as well. And so I think we do need to be mindful of sleep challenges and have just a few tricks and tools up our sleeve because ultimately, if we don't help them when all of the mess kind of gets pulled off the shelf and they start thinking about this,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna call somebody else, and it might not be somebody as kind and compassionate as you, right? So
Sure.
that's why it's so imperative that people kind of get themselves skilled up about the stuff that kind of stresses parents out in the early days and weeks, months.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another parameter that I want to put you on the hot spot for again, and that is that months and weeks later, or weeks and months later into maybe it was success. You resolved the problem. There's this weaning aspect that happens as well with
Yeah.
sleep. And parents start to panic again. I think this is where the real crisis comes in because access to care at that point is very limited. What is a good way to set families up early on to know that they can either come back to you or they can reach for the resources? Do we need to be just talking about this more in the early
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
about what weaning might look like and how sleep can be disrupted later on and what to
Yeah.
do about it?
Yeah, you're so right. And so many people that I teach, they get into sleep work because what happens is they work really hard with their clients in those early days and weeks, and feeding's going beautifully, the
Hmm.
baby's gaining weight, the challenge is resolved, they've talked about responsive parenting, the baby's all snuggled up in a sling, and it's all beautiful. And then they might reappear at that lactation consultant's door several months down the line because they've seen a non-responsive sleep trainer and um, they have, they've got a dip in their milk supply. So that's
Right.
that's one scenario that frequently happens. But another
Hmm.
one is you're absolutely right. Sometimes breastfeeding is going really well. Like there's no problem. It's just that when the baby is 10 months or whatever, the parent wants some balance. They have exercised their bodily autonomy right
Right.
to decide how long to feed their baby with their body for, which is
Hmm.
totally fine, right? And at that point, they need to have that compassionate approach to making the end of breast or chest feeding as gentle as it was when we got it started. We can't invest all this time at the beginning and then not care when somebody wants it to come to an end, whether that's
Mm.
related to sleep or not. And I think that's another part of it. I think sometimes people think that night weaning, for example, is going to instantly fix night waking.
Right.
Might not
Yeah.
necessarily, but it's still the parent's right to make that choice. And then there may be multiple reasons why they want to get some balance back with the number of night feeds or all of that. It's complicated, isn't it?
It
Really.
sure it is complicated, but yet I think there are some really solid solutions. And I think that's when you take into all the parameters. And if you get an opportunity, I think that your presentation really speaks to that, honestly. And I've had a chance to listen to it. So firsthand, I'm just going to tell people this by far is going to be one of the most important presentations you listen to this year in order to support families, not only in sleep, but just in their whole kind of, I call it like the career of, early parenting, because that's what it's a full-time job, as we know, and beyond. So supporting families in a sleep crisis without non-responsive sleep training by Dr. Lyndsey Hookway. Lyndsey, thank you so much. Before I let you go, I know that you're doing so much. I know right now you've got 6 books on the market. You're available on Instagram, as you said. That's where people reach you actually weekly right now for those check-ins and such. But what else have you been doing, and how can people, reach you for further training?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm really easy to find on socials. Come and be friends on Instagram, especially. Haven't figured out TikTok. There's plenty of other people doing TikTok, so I'm staying
Yeah,
clear of that. Find me on Instagram. You can also find me on my website, lyndseyhookway.com. Lots of resources, training on there, and over at the Holistic Sleep Coaching Program. So that's holisticsleepcoaching.com. And we also have, though I say it myself, a rather brilliant YouTube channel. So again, that's Holistic Sleep Coaching. Every single week, I spend hours of my life creating these really, really content-packed free videos. So I debunk
amazing.
myths, I provide like snippets and quick tricks and tools to support you in your work. So feel free to come along and check out that channel, and yeah, feel free to plunder the information that I put out there
That's
for free.
amazing. Yeah. Well, we appreciate you, Lyndsey. And again, this presentation by far is going to be one that I think that stands out to so many, and will make a difference. Some really great practical tools in there as well. So thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been wonderful having you. And to all of our viewers, don't forget to check out this presentation and so many others over on our website at goldlactation.com, and join us for our entire conference this year for 2025. We'll look forward to seeing you online. Bye bye for now, everyone.